Hey everybody, it's Kevin. So sorry that you are not seeing Donna instead of me today. And I'm looking forward to hearing that everything is going well with Donna. She is in some storm conditions in the area that she lives in, and anybody in that area, our thoughts and prayers go out to them to make sure that everything is safe and copacetic. And Donna said, I'll reschedule, I'll get some things kind of shifted. I said, we already have the schedule. So let's get together and let's talk about some things that are, highly actionable inside of the deprescribing space. So deprescribing in general, I think Donna is, one of the greatest experts that I've been across, that she really covers all the medication elements. But today I want to talk about something a little more global. The way that we think about deprescribing in this is minimally disruptive medicine, right? So we talk about oftentimes like disease burden of individuals and really going through, here's the disease burden. The individual has diabetes, or they have high cholesterol, or they have CHF, and here's what's going to happen based on the symptoms that they're going to experience, the comorbidities they're going to come across, all of those elements. And so we consider that highly as healthcare providers. We try to motivate our patients oftentimes by talking about some of those issues that we're hoping to prevent, right? But the thing we don't talk about is all the issues we're causing by treating those problems. We don't talk about, the fact that if you are a diabetic that is fulfilling all of the requirements necessary for you to comply with what's in current guidelines, you're talking about 4 hours a day, 4 hours a day of testing and meal prep and exercise and, going and hitting these doctor's appointments. Guess what? Not everybody has that amount of time. So we have to find ways to streamline things down to make sure that folks are successful overall inside of their overall care. In the hospital setting, we often see that we'll put a drug on board, make sure it's scheduled Q4 hours, right? Q4 hours is exceedingly disruptive for sleep. And so when you're trying to sleep in a hospital setting and someone is waking you up in the middle of the night to give you an injection or another treatment, when oftentimes there's no actual therapeutic benefit and you could have skipped those doses or given an 8-hour window for someone to actually be able to rest, there's some real benefit to minimally disruptive medicine. And so I wanted to show you a graph real quickly. I was looking at Kevin MD and going over some things that talked about all the things that we do to really get into a patient's world and disrupt the way that they're currently living. And so for us to be able to get into their world and impact the way that they're living and be able to take some of the burden off, some of the things that you can do. We'll list a few of those off, and I look forward to your guys' comments and other information of what you've done to take some of that burden off of folks' shoulders and be able to put that back on the healthcare system. So here's one example I'll give you. Statin utilization. So sometimes statin utilization, it's highly prioritized amongst healthcare systems because there's incentives and drivers for us to utilize statins. Unfortunately, some folks, because of pill burden, because of side effect profiles, because of life expectancy, they're not going to be taking a statin. But what ends up happening is we do not reward our healthcare providers for taking medications off of these individual patients. Instead, we penalize them, saying, oh, this patient should be on a statin, and don't get into the real meat of what is actually going on there, that they shouldn't be on a statin. They don't fit all the criteria that make the most sense for them to be on this medication. And that's one of so many other medications that oftentimes just get listed out as medications that individuals should be on, but add to burden for them overall. Side effect burden, the follow-up burden, testing burden, all of those things that end up occurring. And guess who ends up getting hit the hardest? And I'll switch over here and I'll share my screen for a second. But who gets hit the hardest? It's the individuals that can't get into care settings. Oftentimes are geriatric patients. So they would be looking to say, hey, I want to find a way to get to my appointment. Their transportation sometimes is limited. Sometimes they're no longer driving. Sometimes they're living in areas where younger people are not living. And so their ability to utilize other services for transportation, once again, limited. The other piece is technology. Oftentimes, utilizing the internet. I think we way too often think that everybody has access to broadband. They don't. They don't have it. And two, the comfort level with it and utilizing and leveraging it for something as intimate as your care adds additional burden and stress on top of older generations that are really trying to take care of themselves, sometimes take care of their loved ones, and the stress that they have as being a caregiver. So I'm going to switch over to this guy real quick that I keep saying I'm going to, and actually present that screen. So I'll switch over here, share screen, and entire screen, this one. All right. So now you guys are able to see this guy. You might have to increase your screen size, and actually I'll just pop myself out of the layout so we can see it a little bit larger. Okay, perfect. So within the screen here, we're really looking at MDM in general, like how certain clinical care models may enact and or inform mentally disruptive medicine care model. So when looking at all the kind of layout of what you have to do or how you have to break these things down, I'll put the link inside of the show notes so you can kind of see the way they've looked at it in this individual study and the impact that it has overall. But I'm going to move us down to the pillars down at the bottom there and zoom in a little bit on this section in particular. And so with this piece or with this section here, let's go here and zoom in just a bit. Okay, so I'll read these off so you guys don't have to. But the patient capacity, huge piece. What support systems do they have? You know, what just general life expectancy do they have? What abilities and or cognitive skills do they have to be able to take care of themselves when we're adding on so much burden? Sometimes the things that we can pull off, you know, happen in deprescribing, but other times the things that we can do to benefit that individual patient is truly simplification of the regimen, you know, just trying to distill things down to the easiest way that they can take something, check for something, and get things coordinated and lined out. So it's not so disconnected, and the synchronicity of it is just, it's so disruptive for someone's lifestyle. So there's one piece. The other one, the integrated, coordinated, supportive, and supported care teams. Sometimes as a pharmacy provider, right, we're not there to just do the, here's your medications, here's the pill box I want to help fill out for you, here's the application I'm going to have you help use you to remind you about medications. There's so much more that we know is in play. In fact, I read a study recently that talked poorly about pharmacists in general on how we did not do well in a study of helping people with social benefits in communities. Interesting study. I feel like it was jaded because of the community that it was looking at, and maybe not targeting, you know, pharmacists most appropriate to be able to do those services. But regardless, I think that social services and things that we can connect the dots on for patients, how are they getting to and from appointments? How are they understanding what's going on? How are they making sure that they feel like they have a voice in the appointments that they're going to, and asking the right questions so that now they can better their understanding, better their overall care moving forward. Same things with cost assistance and, you know, injectables if they can or can't do an injection. For example, I had a loved one that was living with us for a little bit. Well, she had a gluteal injection that was not the easiest to give yourself a gluteal injection. So some of those things, if she wasn't a younger individual and was older and didn't have a group to reach out to, sometimes those things I have gone and evaluated individual patients, looked up in cupboards, and guess what's sitting up in these cupboards? Those medications that they didn't understand, that kept getting shipped to them by mail order, that they had no idea what the benefit was. And they were sitting hundreds of thousands of dollars in cupboards, unopened, unutilized. So we have to be able to connect those dots. Long-term goals. We already talked about a little bit with, you know, expectations of lifespan, quality of life versus quantity of life, you know, some of those pieces. We really have to talk to patients. You know, we can't just dictate to them what's going to be best. You know, here's what is going to be best for your care. Here's what's going to be best for you as an individual. It's a very paternalistic, colonizing type of way of thinking. You know, I just got off the meeting this morning looking at the international simulation space, you know, simulation in medical training. And one thing that I know is really being pushed by the team at Washington State, for example, is for us to do a better job of listening and connecting with, you know, cultural components. As Naomi, one of my colleagues, said, it's not necessarily to the competency level, but it's to a somewhat of a level of proficiency, you know, so that we're truly listening to the long-term goals and connecting what those long-term goals are related to so we can best serve the patient. All right, life space, patients, and caregivers. Another thing, you know, we don't consider sometimes all of the other factors that happen in relationships that may be encountered from a caregiver and a patient perspective. Sometimes the living situations are an issue. Sometimes the living situations that we see and pop up, they don't allow for some of the things that we would expect inside of an institutional setting to happen inside of the home. And so we have to be able to evaluate what are the living conditions, how is the patient being able to, you know, maneuver through what's happening. Next one, the A, the available expertise and best evidence practices. We need to get experts into our patients' corners so they can really connect the dots. But some of the available evidence, guess what? Sometimes there are medications that we're utilizing and we do think there could be some level of benefit someday, somewhere in combination with this. The side effect profile is massive. it's not a benefit for the patient overall. Their life expectancy is very short. So those kinds of things of being able to pull that expertise and the evidence all together so we can truly impact the patient, big deal. All right, two more. So the first one is resources to identify and minimize disruption. There are a lot of community resources available. So many that I feel like we do a really poor job of actually connecting them all together and weaving them for patients because we're so siloed and isolated. So how do you find some of these resources in your community? How do you get in touch with them? Some of them, like aging and long-term care institutions, working with your county health organizations, working with local like 501Cs and other individuals in the area that are trying to connect the dots for healthcare. All of those are wonderful resources in your area to be able to help direct for resources. How can we find ways to make it easier and take burden off of patients' shoulders and what's currently available for them? And the last one, the shared decision-making approach. Guess what? I talk about it all the time. I feel like I talk to students about this most often. All of you, I'm sure, are well versed in it. When it comes to making decisions for individual patients, them following through, them feeling burden, them finding success, if that process of making the decision is you are the expert and they are the patient, the likelihood of success is very small, infinitesimally so, because we're seeing a generation that respond to that kind of dogma starting to go away. They're going to their final resting place. And, thank goodness I was able to work with that World War II kind of generation of individuals that did seem to respond well to that kind of arrangement. But when we're looking at folks that are, in current medicine, we have to be able to recognize that shared decision-making is the future of what we're trying to do. It allows us to kind of align products, clinical services, et cetera, to cater to what the needs of communities are. And it lets us connect with those individuals so that now we can really minimize those disruptive elements inside of medicine by actually knowing what they are. All right. Hey, thanks so much. Donna will hopefully be back sometime this week to give her presentation. Just wanted to plug things in today for a live, but really appreciate you guys being here. And if you have any questions or anything ally, join us at rphally.com. Head over to Donna's page at Deprescribing. It's her channel. Join it. Join the conversation. Look forward to you guys grabbing some of Donna's resources, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.